lost my phone. Oh, never mind. Said I lost my phone. All praise to Yahweh by Shem Yahweh Shai. You know what I'm saying? Lord willing, man, you get something from it. We're at chapter 4 in First Maccabees. You know what I'm saying? For anybody that's not knowing what's going on, we are reading from the Maccabees. We are, going through each book, reading each chapter every Friday, that we can understand why Paul is saying neither Jew nor Greek, why men in the New Testament are speaking a certain way. Because if you're not familiar with the history in the Maccabees, the New Testament will not make no sense. You know what I'm saying? Because you'll start seeing where they be like, hey, Gentiles, but, let's get into it, man. This is First Maccabees 4, and this is a really good important chapter as well. It says, then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen and 1,000 of the best horsemen and removed out of the camp by night, to the end he might rush in upon the camp of the Jews and smite them suddenly. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Judas heard, therefore, thereof he himself removed, and the valiant men with him, that he might strike the king's army, which was at Emus, whilst yet the forces were dispersed from the camp. In the mean season came Gorgias by night into the camp of Judas, and when he found no man there, he sought them in the mountains. For he said, these fellows flee from us. But as soon as it was day, Judas showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords to their minds. And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed and compassed round about with horsemen, and these were expert of war. Then said Judas to the men that were with them, fear ye not their multitude, neither be afraid of their assault. Right? You know what I'm saying? Every time when we see the heathens with all these different type of weapons and all these type of things that they try to do, we get a little discouraged. We start getting a little faint-hearted. We start, thinking, carnally minded. You know what I'm saying? And we got to always constantly remind our people like that we have a God that is willing to fight for us day and night, because for our people that don't know that, we are the Israelites, the real descendants of Jacob, that our God has done valiant things in this earth. I was just reading that in the book of Psalms earlier, the mighty prophecy, book of prophecy in the book of Psalms, man. I was reading that, man, and it was, giving me an encouraging word, man. It says, remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea when Pharaoh pursued them with an army, right? Let's get that real quick. Just, for a reminder, because you got to think about this. Our fathers of old studied the law. They studied the precepts. They read all the prophets. They read all these different things. They realized, the things that the Most High God did for his people. But it's just like today, we forgot those things, and that's why we got to do like Paul did in 1 Corinthians 10 and remind these Israelites of the acts that our fathers went through, to remind them, right? Let's get this. Let's see. I think it's 13 or 14. I think it's either 12 or 13. Let's see what chapter 14 is. I think it's either 12 or 14. Let's see. Yeah, let's get this real quick. I'm going to start at verse 1, then we're going to jump down. It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel that they turn and encamp before Piraroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal Zephon, before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness have shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so, right? And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And they said, what have we done this, that we have let the children of Israel go from serving us? Right? So now Pharaoh's about to try to pursue our forefathers, to the Red Sea. Let's see. Now let's get verse number 12. It says, now let's get number 11. It says, and they said unto Moses, because there was no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? See, that sound like black people. That sound like a bunch of Negroes complaining, oh, Moses, you done took us out of here to die. Our people do the same thing. Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians, that we should die in this wilderness, right? So, that's the same thing our people have even to this day. Leave us alone. Let us just keep serving in this new Egypt. You know what I'm saying? Leave us alone, because, in the sense that, Yahweh Shai is the, like Moses. He's that prophet that was raised up like Moses. So as Moses, gave our fathers an encouraging word to don't doubt, believe that the Lord will deliver you. It's the same way with Yahweh Shai. When he comes back and he delivers the Israelites from this, new Egypt, captivity. We got to keep encouraging our people. Hey, it's not better for you to serve these new Egyptians. It's better for you to trust in the Lord that he's going to deliver you. It says, the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace, right? It says, and the Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me, speaking to the children of Israel that they go forward? But lift up thou up thy rod, and stretch thy hand over the sea, and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I'll get me honor upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, upon his chariots and upon his horsemen, right? So let's jump down now to the point. Let's get this real quick. It says, and Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea, right? So the Lord overthrew the Egyptians. This is what Judas is trying to remind our people of, the acts that the Most High God did for our fathers. He overthrew the Egyptians in the Red Sea, It says, now, therefore, let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, and destroy this host before our face this day, right? And I was actually reading something on this, man. Let me get this in Deuteronomy chapter 4. I think it's 3 or 4. Let me see where it's at. I think it's either 4. Because we want the Most High God to remember the covenant. Right, let's get this Deuteronomy chapter 4, and let's get verse 23. See, we want the Most High God to remember the covenant that he made with our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We want him to actually, remember that thing, right? It says, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 23, it says, take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget the covenant of the Lord your God. See, our people, when we went into captivity, we forgot, the Lord our God, we forgot the covenant, It says, which he made with you, and make you a graven image or the likeness of anything which the Lord thy God hath forbidden thee, right? Because when you look at it today, we're the biggest Christians, we're the biggest anything in this world. We just gravitate to everything except for the covenant. Our people look to all these different philosophies, lies. Some of them don't even believe in the Bible because they think it's a white man's book. You know, they believe that all these different things, except for actually coming and studying the truth of the Bible, not Christianity, the truth. You know what I'm saying? Realizing that this is talking about you, all the things that happened to your ancestors, and the things that's happening to you today. You know, we forgot the covenant, right? Let's get one more. Let's get this in Psalms, because we want the Lord to remember that covenant that he made with our fathers. We don't want the Lord to keep letting us suffer here in this Egypt. You know, let's get this. This Psalm 74, verse number 20. It says, have respect unto the covenant, right? So we want the Lord to have respect unto the covenant. Matter of fact, let's see. Yeah, let's get this Psalm 74. Let's start it. I think, was it 18 or 19? Yeah, let's get this. Verse 8. I knew it was somewhere here. It says, remember this, that the enemy have reproached, O Lord. See, these heathens, they always reproach. These heathens always scoff. These heathens always do this, you know, and that the foolish people have blasphemed thy name. They always blaspheme the name of the Most High God. I mean, he say this is his chosen people, but look how the way they living today. He must have forgot about them, because they still in our hands. They God ain't ever gonna come back and save them. See, that's what these Gentiles think, you know, foolishly. It says, oh, deliver not the soul of thy turtle dove unto that multitude of the wicked, right? We don't want our souls to ever get delivered again into the hands of the wicked, these wicked Gentile nations. Forget not the congregation of thy poor forever, right? And when we read Revelation chapter 2, we know we are the poor, you know. Let's keep going. It says, have respect unto the covenant, right? We want God to have respect to the covenant that he made with our forefathers, right? Let's get that. The covenant, it's in the same chapter. We just got to jump up to verse 10. Right, this is Deuteronomy 4 and 10. Let's see. Yep. It says Deuteronomy 4 and 10. It says, especially the day that thou stoodest before the Lord thy God in Horeb, when the Lord said unto me, gather me the people together, and I'll make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth, and that they teach their children, right? So this is the covenant that we made with the Most High God. We made a covenant with God and said that we were going to keep his commandments. Our forefathers verbally agreed and said, hey, Lord, we're going to keep your commandments. And if we don't listen, we agree to the curses that you said that you will put upon our people. You know, so it goes hand to hand. You know, we got to be honoring and respecting the covenant. You know what I'm saying? Because the covenant is a contract. You do what I say, you'll be blessed. But if you're not doing what I say, you'll deal with the curses. You know, and there's a lot of curses that our people are dealing with. Depression, anxiety, you know what I'm saying? Poverty, hatred, strife, envy, not getting along with their parents, you know, different things, man. Building houses and another man would dwell, you know, just different things that our people deal with today, you know, because obviously we don't respect the covenant. God respects the covenant, you know what I'm saying? He's gonna honor that covenant with the with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you know, with a faithful remnant, right? So let's get this again. It says, have respect unto the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of the inhabitants of cruelty, right? This earth is full of the inhabitants of cruelty. These nations, man, they ruin the earth in nasty rigor, you know, working Israel to death, having us, you know, working all these hours, lowballing us by not wanting to pay us, you know, give us sin, you know, keep us in sin too. Let's just keep going. It says, now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure the Lord will have mercy upon us and remember the covenant of our fathers, right? It says, and destroy this host before our face this day, that so all the heathen may know that there is one who delivereth and saveth Israel. See, we gotta sit on this verse for a moment. It says the heathens gonna know that there is one who delivereth and saveth Israel. Once again, these heathens are going to have to realize that what the Most High God, when He sends His Son back, is going to deliver and save Israel. It's a lot of people that teach, that salvation is an all-inclusive thing when the Bible does not say that. So we can't be twisting the words of the Most High God. The Most High God said every single last word that's in this Bible is going to come to pass. From what the prophets have spoke of old is going to come to pass. You can't break, bend, change, nothing. It says with the Lord, He's not a God that He should repent. He's not somebody that I just said that 5 minutes ago and I'm gonna change my mind. No, He's the same God from all the way from the beginning of time before He even created anything, right? It says, then the strangers lifted up their eyes and saw them coming over against them. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle, but they that were with Judah sounded their trumpets. So they joined battle, and the heathen, being discomfited, fled into the plain. Howbeit, all the hindmost of them were slain with the sword, for they pursued unto Gazara and unto the plains of Idumea, right? It's talking about Esau, and Azotus and Jemna, so that there were slain of them upon a 3,000 men. This done, Judas returned again with his hosts from pursuing them, and said to the people, be not greedy of the spoil, inasmuch there is a battle before us, right? Because we understand that in the law, when you go out to war, when we spoil, we can, take certain things, according to the law. That's lawful, not just anything. You can't just just because you go and discomfort a heathen. Back then, you couldn't just pick up an idol and just have it. Could we see what happened to that brother in Joshua? He tried to hide the idol in his tent, a couple things, and you see what the Lord did, right? Let's see. Let's see. You can say this really goes into it. Let's see. Deuteronomy 21:10. It says, when thou goest forth against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thy hand, and thou hast taken them captive, right? And seest among the captains a beautiful woman, has a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to wife. Then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and par her nails. And she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off her, and shall remain in thy house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. And it shall be, if thou have no delight in her, then thou shalt let her go whither she will, but thou shalt not sell her at all for money. Thou shalt not make merchandise of her, because thou hast humbled her, right? So, this is an example that the Lord, said that when we, used to go against Gentile nations, and we used to, win the battle, that we could take some spoil, and, if it's lawful for you to do it, then it was okay, but at this time, Judas was like, hey, I know we're going out to battle, but don't be too greedy, of the spoil, because it's still a battle before us, man. We still got to remember, the main cause of why we're doing this, right? It says, in Gorgias and his host are here, but by us in the mountain. But stand ye now against our enemies and overcome them. After this, ye may boldly take the spoils. And Judas was yet speaking these words, then appeared a part of them looking out of the mountain. Who when they perceived that the Jews had put their host to flight and were burning the tents, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. When therefore they perceived these things, they were sore afraid, and seeing also the host of Judas in the plain ready to fight, they fled everyone in the land of strangers. Then Judas returned to spoil the tents, where they got much gold, silver, blue silk, and purple of the sea, and great riches, right? And this they went home and sung a song of thanksgiving and praised the Lord in heaven because it is good, because his mercy endured forever, right? So whenever our fathers, went out against these nations and fought them and overcame them, they first and foremost stop before anything and give all praise, honor to the Most High God, because it's his mercy. That's the reason why we get to, still be alive, doing these things, It says, thus Israel had a great deliverance that day. Now all the strangers that had escaped came and told Lysias what had happened. It says, who when he heard thereof was confounded and discouraged, because neither such thing as he would were done unto Israel, nor such thing as the king commanded him were come to pass. And then it says the next year, therefore following, Lysias gathered together 70,000 choice footmen, men of foot, and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. So they came unto Idumea and pitched their tents at Bethsura, and Judas met them with 10,000 men. And when he saw the mighty army, he prayed and said, blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gavest the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and his armor bearer, right? So we come from mighty men of war. We don't come from men that, tuck their tail, agree with the heathen as our leaders do today. That's why it says in Jeremiah 14 that the Jews are black, meaning, we are mourning right now. Black means mourning in some sense, some sense black does mean mourning. So right now we're mourning, and our leaders, are weak, That's why they, go out there and, sign away that black people should be under subjection, which they're going off, and Lord willing that the elders repent, for doing that, Let's get that. Let's get an example with that. Let's see. Let's get First Samuel real quick. Let's get First Samuel. Because, we had mighty men that fought for Israel, we didn't have men that just said, yeah, let's lay down with the heathen, Let's get this Psalms 50. And let's get verse 50 and 51. It says, so David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Right? Let's keep going. It says, and the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Shiram, even unto Gath and unto Ekron, right? And there's many different precepts about David, how he was a man of war, That's why he couldn't build the temple, because he had so much blood on his hands, And let's get this with Saul's son. Let's get that example. Let's get 1 Samuel 14. Let's get this real quick. Let's get 1 Samuel 14, and let's get verse 13. It says, 1 Samuel 14:13, and Jonathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet, and his armor bearer after him. And they fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer slew him, right? And the first slaughter which Jonathan's armor bearer made was about 20 men, within as it were a half acre of land, which a yoke of oxen might plow, right? Even Jonathan was a mighty man of valor, man. He was a mighty man of war, And the Most High God helped these men, confound these nations when they came up and blasphemed against the God of Israel. especially Goliath. You know, he was talking big game. You know, Goliath was talking proudly, blaspheming Yahweh's name, and David was not finna sit there and let that keep going. You know, everybody else got a little timid, everybody else got a little scared, but you know, David did not get scared. David stood up for what was right. All right, let's keep going. It says, scroll back up, I think. Oh, no, okay. It says, shut up this army in the hand of thy people Israel, and let them be confounded in their power and horsemen. Make them to be no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the host of Lycius about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. Now when Lycius saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judah's soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went unto Antioch, and gathered a company of strangers, and having made his armor greater than it was, he proposed to come again into Judea. Then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. So now we're finna get to something very, very important. You know what I'm saying? Something that a certain somebody celebrated in the New Testament, you know. So let's keep going. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up to Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate and the altar profane, the gates burned up, and shrubs growing in the courts, as in a forest or in one of the mountains, yea, the priest's chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentation, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried toward heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. And he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, right? You know, because we know that back then, you know, while we were under the Levitical priesthood, you know, we had mighty priests, you know, that, you know, devoted themselves to teaching Israel the laws of God, you know. And you know, shout out to the tribe of Levi. You know, those, you know, are the priests of the Most High God. But now we know that we're all priests because of the order of Melchizedek that Christ comes in, right? It says, who cleansed the sanctuary and bear out the defiled stones into an unclean place, right? Hold up. We'll have to pause real quick. I got to put my computer on the charger. Turn on my camera real quick. Put my computer on the charger, Salakia. Should have been had it charged up, but I forgot. Let's see. Let's put this thing on the charger. Right. Salakia. Got to charge my computer real quick. Okay, all praise. We all charged up. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay. It says, who cleansed the sanctuary and bared out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profane, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down, and laid upon the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place until there should come a prophet to show what should be done unto them. Oh, done with them. Then they took whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former, right? So this is an example of our forefathers keeping the commandments while they're in captivity, right? And let's see. Let's get that actually real quick. Let's get the examples of what we're talking about that they kept the law. They said according to the law. You know, let's get this real quick. Let's get Exodus 20 and let's get Exodus 20, not verse chapter 9. Exodus 20 and let's get 25. right? It says, Exodus 20 and 25, and if thou will make me an altar of stone, right? Same thing right here. Let's go back. It says, and they took old whole stones according to the law and built a new altar to the former, right? Let's get it. And if thou will make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone, for if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it, right? So they had to make stones according to the law. You know, you cannot build it of hewn stone. Let's look up a hewn stone for anybody that does not know. Right. So this is what a hewn stone looks like. You know, let's get a couple images. Right. You couldn't build it out of that. You cannot build an altar out of that. It cannot be of hewn stone. Right. Right. So let's get the other example. Let's get Deuteronomy chapter 27. Let's get that Deuteronomy 27 real quick. Right. And let's get verse 5 through 6. My computer charge. Okay, it is all praise. It says, Deuteronomy 27, verse 5. And there thou shalt build an altar unto the Lord thy God, an altar of stones. Thou shalt not lift up any iron tool upon them, right? Same law, just getting reintroduced. Thou shalt build the altar of the Lord of thy God of whole stones, and thou shalt offer burnt offerings thereon unto the Lord thy God, right? Let's look up a whole stone. All right, something like this. Whole stone. Right. Okay. All praise. All praise. Let's go back. Okay. And so now we know what it's talking about right here in verse 47. It says, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hallowed the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick, and the altar of burnt offerings and of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table and spread out the vials or the veils. And it says, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 5th and 20th day of the 9th month, which is called the month of Caslu, in the 140 Salakia. I don't know what happened. The Wi-Fi just went out, but we'll try to finish this up. Lord willing that you got something from it. Apologize for that inconvenience, but the Wi-Fi went out, right? So uh right here it says that it was ordained that our fathers ordained that we keep this feast. I want to get that real quick. Because anything that one of our leaders of our nation ordains, we keep it. That's why we, honor and respect feast of dedication, day of Simon, stuff like that, because we're doing it in respect for these people, the things that they did for the Most High God, and to honor the Most High God as well, above all, right? Let's get this in Exodus 22, because the Lord already said it, right? Let's get this Exodus 22, and let's get 28. It says, Exodus 22:28, thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people, right? So, we can't curse none of the rulers of our people. And the Maccabees were rulers of our people, from Judas to the rest of the brethren. They, put their lives on the line. So we're not going to curse them and be like, hey, we're not going to keep that, because that's not Leviticus 23. I don't have to keep that because that's not in the law of God. See, you can't be doing that. You can't be cursing the rules of your people. These men put their life on the line for the nation of Israel, right? And let's get this John 10, because even Yahweh Shai himself, he kept the feast of dedication, right? It says, John 10:22, and it was at Jerusalem, the feast of the dedication, and it was winter. So why in the world is who the people call Jesus Christ celebrating a feast day from the Apocrypha? That lets you know that these books are very important. First and Second Maccabees. This is very important because why? Christ himself kept it. So if Christ kept feast day dedication, why are you keeping pagan holidays that Christ never celebrated? Christ didn't celebrate Ishtar, Easter. He didn't celebrate Janus, New Year's. He didn't celebrate Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving. He didn't celebrate none of that stuff. You caught him keeping the Levitical feast days, which is in Leviticus 23, and also the feast days that was ordained by our fathers, right? It says, at that time also they builded up the Mount Zion with high walls, with strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should come and tread it down as they done before. And they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Bethsur to preserve it, and the people might have a defense against Idumea, right? So Christ kept this. This is so important because right before the New Testament, this happened right before the New Testament, before the Romans being in rulership and Christ was under Roman rulership. This history is very important with the Maccabees, and we do honor and respect our forefathers, Mattathias, Judas, Simon, and John, and the rest of the Maccabees that put their life on the line for the nation of Israel. But with that, digress, give all honor and praise to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. We do so through his only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. And I'm going to say Shalom, keep enduring.